Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our Institution of Global Professionals free webinar. Thank you for all joining with us in this marvelous evening. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome all of you, my dear lovely audience. Today, I'm your inviter, Nasrin Nisha. I'm from Bangladesh. And I'm proud to be associated with IGP as a global member. I feel respected and privileged to host this webinar. It's my delight to welcome all of you in this evening in our Institution of Global Professionals free webinar. Thank you all for joining us. But before starting our program, I'd like to request everyone, please share this webinar with your friends, with your family, and please tag them and mention them in our comment box. My dear lovely audience, we believe that we believe that power is gained by knowledge, not hoarding it. So please share this more and more with your friends, with your family person in your newsfeed too, and also mention them. Once again, I'm Nasrin Nisha. I'm volunteer in IGP from Bangladesh. Every day we have some new participants who join with us. So let me tell about IGP. Institutions of Global Professionals serve students and community resource, providing holistic social work education for create a profession generation. IGP is a leading on online skill development institute with thousands of learners worldwide. We make it get at able to use for every knowledge seeker to originate personality, more ambitious, make confident to face any circumstances and develop own skills. We are entrusted with international recognition, social work. So let me tell about more about IGP. Institute of Global Professionals is an educational institution provides social work, provide effective training and consultation to generate profession generation all over the world. We organized our webinar. We organized our training offline, online courses, etc. by based and trained speaker coaches from all over the world to create a best learning platform for all of you. Our mission is to empower people and enhance. We have already completed our We have already completed our 508 number webinar. Today I'm presenting webinar number 509 Professionals International webinar, and today's topic is 7E's learning cycle or model. The topic is 7E's learning cycle or model. Before starting our program and before introduce our speaker, let me tell about our new surprising announcement about our quiz competition session. We are giving 20 certificates for our in our quiz competition session. Before we have top 10 participants, but now from today we are giving 20 certificates to 20 top winners in our quiz competition session. So after our speaker's presentation, we'll start our quiz competition session. In that session, we want more and more participants. So please, I repeat and request all of you to share this event so that everyone can know about it. My dear lovely audience, let's welcome our speaker.
Hi, good evening.
Welcome, ma'am.
So I would like to greet again everyone good morning, good afternoon, and good evening who are present in the different platforms in this international webinar of the Institute of Global Professionals.
Thank you, ma'am. And I am welcoming you once again. And the platform is for you to present your presentation with our participants. You can start.
Okay, so I am Maria Caterina D. Santos, a graduate of Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Biological Science at Angeles University Foundation, Angeles, Philippines. And I am currently taking up my master's degree at Universidad de Dagupan, Philippines. So I am a science teacher at Benigno S. Aquino National High School and currently the coordinator of our department. So I would like to express my profound gratitude to the people who, in one way or the other, that helped me speak on the screen tonight, and they are the following: to the IGP CEO, Sir Kosik Data, to the Regional Supervisor in Mathematics, Dr. Nestor P. Nuesca, to our Schools Division Superintendent at SDO Tarlac Province, Philippines, Dr. Ronaldo A. Pozon, who keeps on inspiring us with wisdom and actions, to our Education Program Supervisor in Science, Dr. Conrado C. Domingo, who is our instructional father in the Science Empire at SDO Tarlac Province, Philippines. To our school principal, Dr. Nelia Y. Andres, who is a transformational leader, to our department head in science, Dr. Amado T. Alimurong, who never doubted my abilities. And last but not the least is Sir Redentor B. Tabamo, the OIC and Assistant Principal of the Senior High School at Benigno S. Aquino National High School, who recommended me to Sir Kosik Data. Thank you so much, sir. So, there is a saying that making a lesson plan is easy, but creating an effective lesson plan is the key to effective teaching and a critical factor in achieving positive student outcomes. So, are you ready for tonight's webinar? Before we start our session, I would like to present first the objectives in this webinar. So, at the end of the session, the participants are able to first identify each phases or stages of the 7E's learning model in lesson plan making, integrate the 7E's learning model in teaching science, and lastly, make at least one daily lesson plan using the 7E's learning model. So, let us define first what is a lesson plan. So, a lesson plan is the teacher's roadmap of what students need to learn and how it will be done effectively during the class time. So, all teachers require a lesson plan that is thoughtfully prepared regardless of their ability. The importance of a lesson plan is emphasized by the need for clarity and comprehension regarding how the entire teaching and learning process will be handled, as well as how students can understand and store the knowledge that is being passed on to them. Lesson plans are necessary for helping students accomplish their goals within a learning environment on a short term and long term basis. It is essential for us, educators, to prepare our lesson plan on a daily basis beforehand and implement the most ideal teaching methods. Attending classroom sessions without a lesson plan is detrimental both to teachers and students. So, a lesson plan may not work as well as you had expected due to a number of external factors like students' response, the learning phases of our learners, and some misconceptions that should be corrected, and those corrections will surely affect our time. But as teachers, we should not be discouraged. It happens even to the most experienced teachers. Take a few minutes after each class to reflect on what worked well and why, and what you could have done differently. Identifying successful and less successful organization of class time and activities would make it easier to adjust to the contingencies of the classroom. Also, to be effective, the lesson plan should not be an exhaustive document that describes each and every possible classroom scenario, nor does it have to anticipate each and every student's response or question. Instead, it should provide us with general outline of our teaching goals, learning objectives, and how to accomplish those. So it is also a reminder of what we want to do and how we want to do it. A productive lesson plan is not one in which everything goes as exactly as planned, but one in which both the students and the instructors or teachers learn from each other. So we have the key components of a lesson plan. The first one is the objectives for student learning. The second one is the teaching and learning activities. And lastly, strategies to check student learning. So take a look at this diagram or cycle. So you can see at the topmost box, what do I want my students to learn? So you have to incorporate this into your objectives. So we have a mnemonic named SMART. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. When we say specific, you should what are the objectives or what are the things that you can teach your students. When we say measurable, we can evaluate them. We can test whether our students learn or did not learn, or what are those misconceptions that should be corrected. Attainable, relevant both to your students and to you as teacher, and time based. This will you will base this according to your curriculum. Going to the next box, what teaching and learning activities will I use? So you will think some teaching strategies or activities to help your students learn faster, or they can cope up with your teaching strategy. So we can incorporate, the first one is reporting. You can assign a certain topic to your students or in groups, and then they will research more about that topic, and they will be learning faster than the usual teacher discussion. Also, you can incorporate a video clip, but make sure you view it first, you preview it first, and draft some guide questions that your students will answer right after viewing those video clips. And lastly, how will you check for understanding? This time, you will test whether your students learned something from the discussion. So you can utilize pen and paper test, and under those pen and paper tests, you can have true or false, matching type, multiple choice, enumeration, and identification. Also, you can utilize group evaluation, which it can be done in by pairs or depending on the class size of your class. So after discussing this diagram, we will be having the steps in preparing a lesson plan. So the first one is outline learning objectives. So under this, we have to determine what we want our students to learn and be able to do at the end of the class. Some of the questions to help us specify our objectives for student learning are: first is, what is the topic? What is your topic? And then, what do you want your students to learn? And what do you want them to understand and be able to do at the end of the class? And what do you want them to take away from that particular lesson? So after outlining those learning objectives, rank them in terms of their importance. rank 1, 2, 3, and 4. Why do we have to rank them? So that it will prepare us in managing class time and accomplishing the more important learning objectives in case we are pressed for time. So in that situation, we can consider these questions. First are, what are the most important concepts, ideas, or skills that you want your learners to learn? And then next is, why are they important? And if you run out of time, which ones can be or cannot be omitted? So you have to bear that in mind. So those questions can help you in deciding on how to rank your objectives. Next is, after outlining your learning objective, this is the time now to develop your introduction. So after determining your learning objectives, you now design the specific activities you will use in order to get your students' interest to understand and apply what they have learned. Because our class will is a diverse um, pool. What do I mean by that? There are different multiple intelligences inside your classroom. So you have to think what is the best activity suited for each student. And then those diverse learners, they also have different academic and personal experiences. They may be familiar with the topic or some are not familiar with the topic. So you can start with a question or activity to gauge students' knowledge of the subject or possibly their preconceived notions about it. Also, this is a good time to check if there are misconceptions that should be corrected right away. So, developing a creative introduction to the topic can stimulate students' interest and encourage thinking. We can use a wide array of approaches to engage students. So, we can use personal anecdote, historical event, thought provoking dilemma, real world example, short video clip, practical applications, and probing questions. So, we can also consider the questions, some of the questions when planning our introduction. First is, how will you check whether the students know anything about the topic or have preconceived notions about it? What are some commonly held ideas or misconceptions about the topic that my students might be familiar with? And third is, what will I do to introduce the topic? So those questions can help you in developing your introduction. So after outlining your learning objectives, developing your introduction, you will now have planning the specific learning activities. So after outlining, developing, you will now plan on what specific learning activities will be conducted. So you have to prepare several different ways in explaining the material to catch the attention of more students and appeal to different learning styles. As I've said earlier, each student has each learning style. For example, there are multiple intelligences like kinesthetic. So there are different styles that your students can learn. So as you plan your examples and activity, estimate how much time will you spend on each. So some questions that would help us decide the learning objectives are, what are you going to do to explain the topic? What are you going to do to illustrate the topic in a different way? How can you engage students in the topic? What are some relevant real life examples, analogies, or situations that can help students understand the topic, and what will students need to do to help understand them better? Okay? So after outlining, developing, planning, you will now have plan to check for understanding or evaluation. Okay? So, now that you have explained the topic and illustrated it with different examples, we need to check for understanding so that we will know if our students are learning. So, we need to think specific questions that we can ask our students in order to check for their understanding. So here are some key points to check if our students are already learning. So number one, what questions will I ask my students to check for understanding? Number two, what will I have my students do to demonstrate that they are following or understanding? Next, going back to the list of my learning objectives, what activity can I have to check if those objectives were met or are already achieved? So, it is an important strategy that will help us with time management is to anticipate our students' questions and answers. So, when planning, decide what kind of questions will be productive for discussion and what questions might sidetrack the class. Think about and decide on the balance between covering content and ensuring that students understand. Okay? So after outlining your learning objectives, developing your introduction, planning the specific learning activities, planning to check for understanding, we now have developed a conclusion and a preview. In this stage, we are already covering in class the topic that were discussed already. So we can do this by summarizing the main points of the lesson. So there are some ways to identify on how to summarize the lesson. First is you will ask your student to help us teachers to summarize the key points. But remember, in doing this, we are also checking if they are learning something. Think about this. How can a student summarize if he or she cannot comprehend it? So if a student can summarize the key points on that lesson, and then it is a good indication that your student is already learning. So after writing the key points on a piece of paper, they will pass it to you and then you will read. If there are misconceptions, those misconceptions can be discussed the next meeting, or those unclear ideas or concepts. So we also have to conclude the lesson not only by summarizing the main points but also by previewing the next lesson. It is like bridging. You have to connect the present and the future lesson. So this preview will spur the students' interest and help them connect the different ideas within a larger context. Okay? So you already outlined your learning objectives. You already developed your introduction. You already planned the specific learning activities. You already planned to check for understanding. You developed a conclusion and a preview. And lastly, you will now create a realistic timeline. So after narrowing, we have to narrow down our list in 2 to 3 concepts. Why? Because our time is limited. For example, your class time is only for 30 minutes or 1 hour. So you have to narrow down your specific objectives so that you can attain them at the end of your class. So we also have to narrow down 2 to 3 ideas or skills that we want our students to learn. Teachers also agree that they often need to adjust our lesson plan during class depending on what the students need. So our list of prioritized learning objectives will help us make decisions on the spot and adjust our lesson plan as needed. Having additional examples or alternative activities will also allow us to be flexible. A realistic timeline will reflect our flexibility and readiness to adapt to the specific classroom environment. So, some strategies for creating a realistic timeline are: we have to estimate how much time each of the activities will take and then some extra time for each. Remember, when preparing a lesson plan, next to each activity, indicate how much time you expect it will take. Plan a few minutes at the end of the class to answer any remaining questions and to sum up key points. Plan an extra activity or discussion or question in case we have time left. And mostly, let us be flexible. So again, here are the steps in preparing our lesson plan. First is you have to outline the learning objectives, develop the introduction, plan the specific learning activities, plan to check for understanding, develop a conclusion and a preview, and create a realistic timeline. So to formally start our session, let's play a game. So are you familiar with 4 picks 1 word? If so, our game will be 1 pick 1 word. I will flash the picture together with the jumbled letters so you can write your answer in the box. So are you ready, dear participants? Let's start. Okay. So the answer is elicit. Next is, so very good. The answer is engage. Next is explore. Next is explain. And then elaborate. So the answer is evaluate. And then the answer is extend. Okay? So it shows that our participants are witty and active. Can you now guess what is our topic for this session? Very good. So our session is all about the 7E's learning cycle or model. So I have here two diagrams. The left one is the 5E's learning model and the right one is the 7E's learning model. So let's start with the 5E's learning cycle. So the stages under the 5E's learning model are engage, explore, explain, evaluate, and elaborate. So the 5E's instructional model was created by Roger Bybee when he was developing it for the BSCS in the USA. BSCS stands for Biological Science Curriculum Study. That is the reason why science teachers started to adopt the 5E's learning model before. So again, the stages under the 5E's learning model are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. So but the 5E's instructional model was modified. There were two phases or stages that were added, and this leads to the 7E's learning model. So the 7E learning cycle was the extension of the 5E constructivist learning model or cycle. Also, it provides a clearer and rational framework for designing science lessons. So each circle here will be discussed further. So let's go with those stages. But again, the stages under the 7E's learning cycle were elicit, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, and extend. Let us discuss first the elicit stage. So under the elicit stage, you are already gathering your students' prior knowledge or your students' stock knowledge. Also, you are already checking if there are some misconceptions, and those misconceptions should be corrected right away. So in this stage, this is the review and recall part of our lesson. This is a good opportunity to deal with our learners' misconceptions, as I've said earlier. We need to identify what it needs to be clarified or corrected to know where will we start. So this is the starting line. We will know in this stage where are we? Where are your students? Where are our students? So it's like we will start in this one because they don't know about this, or they already know about this, so let's skip this part, or they don't know about this, or they are wrong, so I need to correct them. Okay? So now that we are familiar with those misconceptions of our students, what are some misconceptions encountered by our students? So some misconceptions are about the concepts of about distance versus displacement, acceleration versus velocity, and units and in measurements, and so on and so forth. So, in this time of pandemic, how are we going to incorporate this stage? So, by doing our LAS or learning activity sheets, let's make sure that there is a review or recall part. Make the instruction clear and simple. We can also get our review part with the SLMs or self-learning modules provided by the Department of Education. So, let's proceed to the second stage. But before that, let's have an example that was extracted from the lesson plan. Okay? So the students will play 4 picks one word where images to be shown within the game are related to the atmosphere. Ask each group to identify the pictures projected in the screen using a Manila paper and the marker. So let's go to the second stage, which is the engage phase or engage uh, cycle. In this stage, the teacher now will stimulate the interest of his or her learners. We are now asking questions. We can show something interesting, or we can also pose a problem that will let your students think. So we are already capturing our learners' interest and curiosity. We are already raising the big questions using the higher order thinking skills or HOTS. We are bridging in a way that we connect learners' past and present experiences or knowledge. We also uncover learners' current knowledge and misconceptions. We as educators, we ask questions, we show them something interesting, or we can post a problem or show a video clip, but make sure there are guide questions right after the video clip. Remember that this stage will not consume a lot of time in the part of our discussion or lesson. Remember that in posing a question, it should not it should tickle our learner's mind. The question should not be vague nor hanging. Rather, the question should be clear, concise, and simple in order for our students to understand it easily. So let's take a look at the example under this cycle. So let the students watch a portion of the movie The Space Between Us. After watching, here are the guide questions. Allow the students to answer them. So number 1, why does the pilots need to use aviation headphones when traveling at higher altitudes? What made the nose of the space shuttle to freeze as it ascends away from the Earth? Why did the characters, specifically Tulsa and Gardner, in the story afloat after the space shuttle had reached a higher altitude? What is the lesson all about? So we can also get sample content from the provided SLMs since we are using blended learning. Okay? So let's go to the next stage, which is the explore or exploration stage. Excuse me. So under this stage, the are already investigating and solving the problem. What will be the teacher's role? So the teacher will act as facilitator. So how can he or he or she will be a facilitator? He or she will ask questions, okay? Or if the learners cannot understand, they can ask him or her. But remember, the students are already moving in this stage. So we can start to introduce the topic by giving simple activity answerable by short period of time in which it can be done orally or verbally. So the students again are already making observation, recording their observations and ideas, making connections and asking questions. So the students now will usually work in pair or in groups. The students are independent from teachers because we teachers will serve as a coach, a mentor, or a facilitator that provides scaffolds, asks or answer questions from them, and observe if the students are doing the right thing, and we teachers will provide the task. So but these are applicable under the STE curriculum. For the students under the regular curriculum, we can provide guided activities like peer or group presentation and roundtable discussion to address our students' individual differences. So, in this stage, we also have to consider the availability of materials, or we can use localizations since we are under blended learning. For example, in a group activity, the students can ask help from their family members, from their vicinity. Also, we can get sample content from the given SLMs. Okay? Since we are utilizing blended learning and modular distance learning. So, let's take a look at the example under this stage. So, show a graph to students which illustrates the ascending layers of the atmosphere. The graph shows the temperature range and distance of each layer from the ground and Earth's surface. Ask the students to analyze the graph and to fill out the necessary information in the table. So here are the guide questions. Number 1, what layer has the lowest temperature? What layer has the highest temperature? What layer is closest to the ground or to the earth or ground temperature? Among these 5 layers, where will man survive? Number 5, what is the basis for the division of Earth's atmosphere? Number 6, why do hikers put on thicker clothes when climbing a high mountain? So, that is an example extracted from a lesson plan under grade 7. The fourth stage under the 7E's learning cycle or model is the explanation or explain stage. In this stage, the students now will present the data gathered during the exploration stage. So our role now, we teachers will develop the concepts through the art of questioning. So we will be asking questions in a way that your learners will arrive at a new concept or a new knowledge. So in this stage, the students now will present all the discoveries that they observed during the previous stages or during the experiment. So the presentation of the learner's outputs can be done individually, by pair, or by group, in which group members will choose who will present to the class. And then the teacher also will utilize the learner's discovery during the exploration stage to help them build the concept or knowledge further, again by using the art of questioning. The teacher will now use deep questioning and explanation or modeling to build scientific explanation. The teacher will give scientific term in which the student gathered during the activity or the experiment. So the teacher would draw out findings from the experiment and ask learners to compare predictions. This is now the processing of new knowledge. The teacher will develop this by asking questions, in which the art of questioning again will be utilized. So during the exploration stage, the data gathered will be presented in this stage. After the students give their observations or answers from the activity, the teacher will process the concepts by giving questions so that the objectives will be met. So here is an example extracted again from a lesson plan. So presentation of the first output or of the first group. Each group will choose three representatives to answer the guide questions orally in front of the class. The teacher will give a sample mnemonic for the students to easily remember the correct order of the layers of the atmosphere. So we can also extract some sample questions from the SLMs or LAS provided. So let's proceed to the fifth stage. This stage is the elaborate stage. So in this stage, the students now should be able to answer the questions posed in the engagement part. The teachers now will convert the data gathered into facts. So this is now the enrichment part in where the questions posed during the engagement phase should now be answered by our students. The students now will use the information they have seen to propose solution or extend their learning to new situation. We will now check if their answers given in the guide questions are correct. The teacher will now formalize learning and apply new knowledge. So the teacher will use and apply concepts and explanations in new contexts to test general applicability. The learners are involved in independent practice. Students are involved from the teacher since the given objectives are already met. So the teacher now will use and apply concepts and explanations in new contexts to test general applicability. The learners are involved in independent practice. Students are involved from the teachers since again the objectives were met. So an example of this stage is emphasize the basis for the division of the layers of the atmosphere. Again, we can extract or get sample questions from other resources. So let's proceed to the second to the last stage of our learning cycle. And this is the evaluation phase in which the students demonstrate understanding and the teacher will evaluate. But take note, our learners has their own individual differences. They have their different learning styles. Not one type of evaluation is applicable to your whole class. Make sure that you cater each and individual differences. Sometimes you can use pen and paper test way. Sometimes you can use group presentation. Some students are very good in writing. Some students are very good in recitation. So sometimes you can utilize recitation or verbal evaluation or oral evaluation, and sometimes you can use written evaluation. So always keep that in mind. So our learners have their differences according to their learning phases, different learning styles, and different needs when it comes in evaluation of their understanding. So this is the part where we check if the learners had a retention of the new concepts or new knowledge. It provides opportunity for learners to review and reflect on their own learning. It provides evidences of learners' changes in understanding, beliefs, and skills. This can be done by self-assessment and self-reflection. We can also evaluate students' learning orally or written. So we can cater individual differences. For example, students under the STE curriculum, we can use higher order thinking skills or HATS. For students under regular curriculum, we can use multiple choice, matching type, true or false type of test, identification, enumeration, and so on and so forth. So an example under this stage is Let the students answer the following in a one-fourth sheet of paper. Number 1, which layer of the atmosphere contains the ozone layer? A. Mesosphere, B. Troposphere, C. Thermosphere, D. Stratosphere. Number 2, why is the presence of ozone above the troposphere important for the survival of living things on Earth? A. It warms Earth's surface. B. It helps in cloud formation. C. It makes jet flying more comfortable. D. It offers protection from the sun's harmful UV rays. So, these are just examples of evaluations. So, let's proceed to the last learning stage of our cycle. And this is the extend or extension phase, in which our students will try to apply the knowledge into real life situation. The teacher will give them the opportunity to deepen their understanding. So, this is a continuation of knowledge, but most of the time, this is self-assessment. The teacher will give the learners the opportunity to discover and to deepen their own little way, or deepen their understanding about the lesson in their own little way, and to enrich them. In other words, the learners will be given opportunity to discover the lesson by themselves. Okay? So the transfer or application of learning. Your students are able to apply ideas or generalizations and transfer principles. Learners are able to make connections not just in the subject area or integration of learning to other academic disciplines or across disciplines, but try to establish connection outside the classroom. In this stage, the students are not merely in the learning will not be merely inside the four corners of the classroom. They will now try to connect it into real life. How are they going to apply it in their everyday living? For example, their lesson is about photosynthesis. So they will be thinking, how can they apply it? How can they put photosynthesis, or how can they understand photosynthesis in everyday life? For example, they can see a tree, so they can apply their learning already. So under the extend phase, here is an example. Ask the students to recognize the importance of the atmosphere. So again, these are the stages under the 7 E's of learning model. So here are they. The first one is elicit, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, extend, and evaluate and extend. Going back to the 5 E's, what are the two stages that were added in the 7 E's learning model? So we have elicit and extend. Originally, in the 5 E's learning model, we only have engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. But the 5 E's learning model was revised, and it elicit and extend were added. So there are benefits in lesson planning. The first one is it provides guidance to teachers. Number 2, it clarifies the learning objectives for teachers. Number 3, it improves the quality of lessons. Number 4, it enables visualization of the entire teaching process. And number 5, it makes learning easier for students. So here is an example of a DLL. So the first component is your objective. We have content standards in which the learners will demonstrate an understanding of the different phenomena that occur in the atmosphere. Performance standard, and letter C, learners' competencies, in which the learners should be able to analyze the advantage of the location of the Philippines in relation to the climate, weather, and seasons. Letter D, specific objective. So your specific objectives, this will be coming from you, from us teachers. So We have three domains. We have cognitive, we have psychomotor, and we have the affective domain. So under the cognitive domain, your students should be able to describe each layer of the atmosphere through its height, composition, and temperature. Number two, the second domain, psychomotor, in which our students can be able to explain the basis for the division of the layers of the atmosphere. And lastly, the affective domain, in which our students should be able to recognize the importance of atmosphere to humankind. Next, we have now the topic. The topic or the content, in which the topic is the different phenomena that occur in the atmosphere. Our subtopic is the layers of the atmosphere. And lastly, your learning resources are as follows. So let's have a closer look if we are able to apply the 7E's learning model. So under this, we have the procedures. The first stage is your elicit, in which you will review the previous lesson or you will present the new lesson. So the students, ask your students to be with their respective group before starting the game. So as I've read earlier, the students will play four picks one word, where images to be shown within the game are related to the atmosphere. Ask each group to identify the pictures projected in the screen using Manila paper and marker. Next, the second stage now is your engage phase or engage stage, in which your students should be able to establish purpose for the lesson. So let the students watch a portion of the movie, The Space Between Us, and allow them to answer the following questions. Number one, why does the pilots need to use aviation headphones when traveling at higher altitudes? Number two, what made the nose of the space shuttle freeze as it ascends away from the Earth? Number three, why did the characters, specifically Tulsa and Gardner in the story, afloat after the space shuttle had reached a higher altitude? Number four, what is the lesson all about? So, next is your exploration stage, in which this will now discuss new concepts and practice new skills. So, under this, show a graph to your students which illustrates the ascending layers of the atmosphere. The graph shows the temperature range and distance of each layer from the ground or Earth's surface. Ask the students to analyze the graph and fill out the necessary information. This is just the continuation. So here are the guide questions. Number one, what layer has the lowest temperature? Number two, what layer has the highest temperature? Number three, what layer is closest to the earth or ground temperature? Among these five layers, where will man survive? What is the basis for the division of Earth's atmosphere? And number six, why do hikers put on thicker clothes when climbing a high mountain? Next is, in this stage, we are already developing mastery, and this is the explain stage, in which the presentation of the first group or the first output. Each group will choose three representatives to answer the guide questions orally in front of the class. The teacher will give a sample mnemonic for the students to easily remember the correct order of the layers of the atmosphere. And then, the next phase is the elaborate phase, in which you will be finding practical application of concepts and skills in daily living, in which the students will emphasize the basis for the division of the layers of the atmosphere. Next is evaluate phase, in which we will now evaluate learning. So let our students answer the following in a 1/4 sheet of paper. Number one, Which layer of the atmosphere contains the ozone layer? A. Mesosphere, B. Troposphere, C. Thermosphere, D. Stratosphere. This is just the continuation. Number two, why is the presence of ozone above the troposphere important for the survival of living things on Earth? A. It warms Earth's surface. B. It helps in cloud formation. C. It makes jet flying more comfortable. D. It offers protection from the sun's harmful UV rays. Next, additional activities for application or remediation or the extend phase. So, ask the students to recognize the importance of the atmosphere. So, this is now the end of my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your presentation with our participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here in the IGP. It's an honor and a pleasure as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am. My dear lovely audience, within a minute we will start our quiz competition session. So get ready for it. Once again, welcome all of you. My dear lovely audience, this is our quiz competition session, and you can get the joining link in our comment box, and you can type the link that's showing in on our screen, that is www.slido.com, and the code is IGP quiz. Today top 20 will be awarded with quiz competition. We already have 23 participants. Let me remind all of you once again to share this session with your friends, with your family. You can mention them and tag them. You can also scan the code that flashed on our screen. You can scan the QR code that flashed on our screen too. Or you can go to our comment box and you can join with us by clicking the link. We have already 34 participants with us. Okay. So, our first question to check if the learners had a retention of the new knowledge, is this illicit or evaluation? Let's see the correct answer. The correct answer is evolution. 71% choose the right answer. Let's see our leaderboard. Okay, we have Emmeline on first position in our leaderboard. Congratulations. Let's go for our next question. To encourage learners to apply or incorporate the concepts and skills to real life, the option is engage or extend. The correct answer is extend. 39% choose the right answer. Let's see our leaderboard. Okay, we have Jameline V. Rivera on first position in our leaderboard. Let's go for our third question. Okay, the stage in where the teachers collect students' prior knowledge, is this elicit or explore? The correct answer is elicit. 80% of majority. Okay, we have Jameline once again on first position. Leaderboard, congratulations. The page in which the teacher is bridging the past and present experiences, elaborate or engage. The correct answer is engage. 54% choose the right answer. Let's see our leaderboard. We have first position in congratulations. So for our next question. It provides students with more actual experiences. Is it explore or elicit? The correct answer is explore. 100% gives the right answer. Congratulations, all of you. Okay, we have once again Mary Day on first position in our leaderboard. Let's see who's going to first place. Learners are involved in independent practice. Is this elaborate or explain? The correct answer is elaborate. 57% gave the right answer. Let's go to our leaderboard. Okay, we have someone new, that is Joel Bernasor on first position in our leaderboard. Congratulations, Joel. Let's see our seventh question. Learners are able to apply ideas and generalizations and transfer principles. Is this explore or extend? The correct answer is extend. 68% of majority choose the right answer. Let's go to our leaderboard. Okay, we have once again Joel Bernasor on first position in our leaderboard. Congratulations. Let's see our next question. Uses deep questioning and explanation. Is it elicit or explain? So the correct answer is explain. 79% choose the right answer. We have once again Joel Bernasser on first position in our leaderboard. Let's go for our ninth question. It is the stage in where formalization and application of learning occurs. Is this explain or elaborate? Correct answer is explain. 21% choose the right answer. Okay, we have someone new, that is Lazel on first position in our leaderboard. Congratulations. Okay, our question number 10. Students make and record observations, make connections, and ask questions. Is it engage or explore? The correct answer is explore. Only 27% choose the right answer. We have Liesel once again on first position in our leaderboard. A lesson, a lesson plan is an exhaustive document that describes each and every possible classroom scenario. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. 39% choose the correct answer. We have Liesel A. Gavaldan once again on first position. Congratulations, Liesel. Question number 12. Develop a creative introduction to the topic to stimulate students' interest and encourage thinking. Is this true or false? The correct answer is true. 100% choose the right answer. Congratulations, all of you. Okay, we have Lizel, Mary, Joel, Sunday, and June. Congratulations, all of you. Let's see our next question. Prepare only one way in explaining the material to catch the attention of our students. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. 81% choose the right answer. That's your leaderboard. Once again, we have Lizel on first position. Congratulations, Lizels, and rest of them. Let's see our next question. The 5E's instructional model was conceptualized by Roger Bibe. Is this true or false? Okay, the correct answer is true. 86% choose the right answer. Let's see our leaderboard. We have Liesel once again on first position. Congratulations. And our last question. The gathering of prior knowledge of our learners are under the elaborate stage or phase. Is it true or false? Go for it, guys. It's your last chance. So the correct answer is false, and 65% chosen the right answer. Congratulations, all of our 20 winners. Okay, we have Liesel on first position, then we can see Mary on second position, then we have Joel Bernassar on third position, we have Sunday on fourth, June or fifth position, we have Daniel on sixth position, and then we have Ben. We have Jerly on seventh position. Then we have Robles on eighth position. Then we have Alex Xavier on ninth, and then we have Emelina on 10th position. Then serially we have Evelyn on placed 11, Marvin placed 12, Joel placed 13, Trixie placed 14, Jamaline placed 15, Sharon placed 16. Okay, congratulations to our top 20 winners. You can get your certificates from our Facebook page. So once again, thank you for joining with us and participate here. We are going to start now our QA session. So stay with us. Welcome once again, ma'am.
Hi.
My dear lovely participants, this is our QA session. You can ask your question to our speaker and mentioning our speaker's name in our comment box. So go for it. And please ask the question on our today's topic based.
So I have here from Marvin Bolivar. Good evening, ma'am. Given the 7 E's in planning a lesson, why lesson planning turns out crucial at some point? What considerations need to address to deliver the lesson with effectively and attainment of objectives without compromising the mastery of skills or competencies. So, good evening, Mr. Marvin Bolivar. So, lesson planning turns out at a crucial point because in this document we will try to explain, or we will try to determine what are the goals that we need to teach our students, how to teach them, how to evaluate their learning, how to check if they understand something. But with what considerations need to address to deliver the lesson effectively and attainment of objectives without compromising the mastery of skills or competencies. I think the first thing that we need to consider is the diversity of our learners. So the first thing to consider is their diverse background, their diverse knowledge, and their multiple intelligences. So how can we address that? So maybe we can use for example, in the evaluation stage, we can use two types of evaluation. If the learner failed or had their difficulty in the pen and paper test, then maybe we can incorporate um, oral evaluation. For example, recitation or reporting. So we can, by reporting or by recitation, we can gauge if they learned something, if they failed on the pen and paper test. So I answered your question, sir. Thank you.
Thank, thank you, ma'am. Our next question from David. He said, "Good evening, ma'am, Santos. What considerations did you take that you choose to discuss 7E's learning model more than other learning models?"
So good evening, Ma'am Day. So I am a science teacher. So that is the first consideration that I chose in why I chose the 7E's learning model more than the other learning models. And also, we are utilizing this in our school. So I hope that I already delivered the lesson in the steps in lesson planning. How can we make a lesson plan clearer and more rational and more student centered? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question from participants: how is the 7E's model different from most traditional science teaching? First question. Next is, what do you consider to be the key features of an effective lessons? Okay. And the third question, how do you deliver a good lesson? And the last question is, what are the components of an effective lesson plan for all grade levels? Please.
Okay, so let's dissect the question. Let's take it by part. So number one, how is the 7E's model different from most traditional science teaching? Because uh, this time we are already student centered. So I think that is the difference on the other teaching, because some teachers during the past time, they are just merely teaching science uh, uh, board, only on board. They are not allowing their students to experiment, or sometimes they want their students to experiment but they lack budget. Number two, what do you consider to be the key features of an effective lesson plan? For me, an effective lesson plan is you already you presented the lesson well to your students, and then your students can learn something. You can check it through the evaluation. And then one feature of also of an effective lesson plan, if your objectives are all met, are all manifested. Next, how do I deliver a good lesson? One simple thing. I trust my learners. I check their background knowledge. I collect their stock knowledge. I check for misconceptions. I correct those misconceptions in order for me to teach the new lesson in a correct way. How can I teach a new lesson if there are still misconceptions? Okay, so what are the components of an effective lesson plan is, first you have to identify your objectives. Those objectives should be SMART. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound or time based. And next is you have to identify your teaching and your learning activities for your students because we are student centered. And lastly, how do we evaluate their understanding, or if they are learning, how can we check for that? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, our next question from Mary Juliet. Lesson planning is an essential tool for teachers. What is your opinion to choose some seasons? Teachers who never update their lesson plans, they just relate to their old used lesson plans.
So maybe here the quotation that I can use is experience is the best teacher. Even though they don't regularly update their lesson plans, they are already updating their stock knowledge, they are already reading some books. And if you can see that the teacher is teaching well, even though if he or she is a seasoned teacher, um let us accept the fact that sometimes they tend to forget, but it is detrimental, it is dangerous for us if we are teaching, if we are not updating our lesson plans. So the best way there is to approach a younger colleague and ask if their lesson plans are updated and try to update them, even though they will just write it in a handwriting, not in a printed way. So at least they have the idea on how to deliver those new lessons, or some, or they can integrate new activities and concepts in that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm. Thank you.
We're still waiting for new question.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Okay. Here we have the question is from Salman, and the question is, how can a teacher know that his students are getting what he is teaching?
Okay, thank you. That is a good question. How we teachers know that our students are grasping the things that we're teaching them, the concepts. Sometimes you can ask them, what is this? You can pop up a question. If you said it 5 minutes ago, then you can ask them again. Okay, we can ask them, what is the meaning of this, how can, what formula are go what are we going to use. So in that time, we can already check if they're understanding something. We have to repeat and repeat. That's why we have the art of questioning.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question from Crispiniano Candido. He said, ma'am, in the elaborate stage, how can we encourage students with communication problems to participate and express their views on the topics being discussed?
Okay, so on that stage, how can we encourage students with communication problems to participate? So sometimes the teachers can approach that student directly. If he or she is shy to ask the students in chorus or ask the teacher in chorus, the teacher, if you are teaching, you can see the facial expression of your students. If he or she cannot understand, you can see that sometimes he is not smiling, or he is frowning, or he is puzzled. You can approach him or her and ask, what is your opinion? Can you understand? What are your opinions? What can you suggest? In that way, even that learner has a communication process, he or she can address that to you personally if he or she is shy.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your valuable presentation with us and your answer. I guess everyone get benefited from your answer and your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope my presentation is clear, and I hope you had a new concept. And after this pandemic, we will be going back to the normal. We will be doing our own lesson plan. And I hope this topic can help us somehow, because it's been 2 years since the pandemic hit us. So I hope this topic is very relevant and timely to us educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Okay, dear participants, today our program name is 7E's Learning Cycle or Model, and the code is IGP3944. Once again, I repeat, the code is IGP3944. Without code, no one is eligible for certificates. With code, you can claim your certificates anytime, and you can check our website. And our website address is www.eduigp.com. So don't forget to share your happiness with us. Till then, stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed.